So you said when you feel like you belong, you have this state of flow. I would also guess that other words that people say is that they're very present,
Yep.
that their minds are not racing ahead, that there is nothing in the moment that you need to manage,
Yeah.
and that there is this peace and
Yeah. Like
freedom.
anchoring, like you're calm, you're anchored.
Yep.
There's the absence of the panic or anxiousness or activation.
Yes. And the activation is an interesting word because I can think to certain friend groups that I was a part of, or certain people I was dating, or certain classes, for example, that I was taking in college, or certain jobs that I hated, where the moment I was walking into the classroom or into work, or I was sitting at a table with my supposed friends, in air quotes, I was not anchored and at peace. I
No.
was so active in my mind and thinking about other things and worried about something and not able to feel anchored or at peace in those experiences. And I personally believe, based on the number of people that write in and the size of the audience on our social channels and the podcast, that most people have a day to day, hour to hour, minute to minute experience of being activated and
Yes.
not belonging.
Yes.
How does somebody know? And I want you listening to us, I want you to think about where is the easiest place for somebody to spot this for themselves so that they can recognize a place in their life where they're not able to be their authentic self and where they get into this particular part of their life and it's very activating.
So I love, 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 love this question for so many reasons. So first of all, in my book, We've Got This, I introduce this concept, which I call our core wisdom. And in fact, Mel, if you said to me, Ritu, tell everyone today, what is the number one thing that you did to bring more belonging and authenticity into your life, to bring more ease and joy and flow and peace into your life?
Yes.
What was that?
Ritu,
It
tell
would
us
be
the number one thing that you did to bring more joy and ease and peace into your life. I can pick up what you're putting down, woman. So tell us,
okay.
because I want to know.
And by the way, I'm a work in progress, everyone. Before you think like, oh wow, Ritu like really has it all figured out and her life is like perfect and whatever, I would tell you like my life feels like it's a fucking mess all the time, and I'm like constantly feeling overwhelmed and. However, I am always anchored to who I am. Like I often will say, here I am anchored. The good swirls around me, the bad, the ugly, everything is swirling around me, and I am anchored. And why? The number one thing that I did to bring more authenticity, belonging, and joy into my life is cultivate what I call my core wisdom.
What the hell is that?
Yeah, right, right. Good question. So our core wisdom is the inner knowing that pushes us to tune into ourselves and say to ourselves, in any situation, any interaction, any moment we're in, whether it's a moment of joy or a moment of feeling stressed or a moment of deep pain, whatever it is, we tune in and we say to ourselves, what's my mind saying right now? And in a moment of joy, we'll be saying, oh, I feel so good. This feels really good. Or I really like her. Like, for example, right now, I'm really enjoying this. But in a stressful moment, it'll say, oh my God, I'm such a loser. See, I'm always a loser. And I can tell he's judging me. And this is why I shouldn't speak. And no, don't speak. And I knew you didn't like me. So we hear the narratives in the head, in the
Okay.
mind. We hear the voice. Our core wisdom also pushes us to say, what am I feeling in my body? So let's go back to what I was sharing earlier. Belonging is a feeling. A lack of belonging is a feeling. What is the difference between fitting in and actually being who we are? You'll know the difference based on what your body is telling you. So our core wisdom says, in this moment, in this experience, what is my body feeling and sensing? And we start to tune in, we feel the stress in our chest, and we'll feel that we're starting to sweat, and we'll feel the heat on our face. And then coupled with the negative narratives in our head, like you're a loser, you suck, see, don't speak, don't be who you are, they're going to judge you. We hear all of this and feel all of this happening. And in that moment, we leap into using our core wisdom strategies, which include, oh no, negative inner saboteur, I'm not going to let you talk to me that way. And we have our affirmations or our mantras, our self-coaching ready to go, because we're like, no way, Ritu Bhasin, stand in your power. Ritu Bhasin, speak. Or my favorite thing, Ritu Bhasin, you've got this. If you don't speak, who will? So then my affirmations and mantras start going, but then my body is still activated.
Yeah.
So then I start doing my deep breathing work in that moment. And I start this deep breathing. I take my hands, I rub it on my thighs, or I put it on my chest, rub my fingers. I feel the tears coming up and I say, cry, let it out, let it out. Oh, you don't want to do it right here because they're watching, you don't feel comfortable? That's okay. Come back to this later. It's called emotional release or emotional discharge. Goes back to the activation. When we feel like we're being judged, what's actually happening in the body is that as human beings, we're animals and we're governed by our nervous systems. All day long, our nervous systems are clocking for harmful things in the environment. Back in the day, although for some people, I think maybe you, Mel, given how your early morning hikes, we're clocking for bears and forests. Okay, most of us are not clocking for bears and forests. What's happening is, oh, see, you didn't say my name right. Or you rolled your eyes when I was speaking, or you raised your eyebrow when you saw what I was wearing, or you keep interrupting me, or I hear the tone in your voice when you're talking to me versus talking to him. Whatever it is, those disrespects, those hurtful things that we're clocking, the body intakes as attacks. It's not the same as being attacked by a bear, but it doesn't matter. The body's like, see, you don't like me. And that's what causes this activation. And when this is happening, energy is generated in the body, which could show up as trembling, shaking, because we're so shocked or we're so upset, could be tears. But the problem is, as humans, we override. And so what happens is the surge of energy comes up, the activation, the tears want to start. We want to start shaking, trembling, let out a moan or a cry. But we say, no, don't do that because you'll be judged. And then we push those sensations down. Our core wisdom says to us, come back to it. So for example, I literally, after I've had a stressful thing happen, or I'm grieving right now because my mother is dying of Alzheimer's, I have all day long, I feel the grief. And I'm like, no, you're at work, keep going, keep going. But I come back to the moment later in the evening and I'll take my memory back to my mom or whatever has happened during the day that's difficult. And then I'll put on my music, my calming music. I'll feel the tears come up and I let the tears out and I cry and let it out. Why? Because I don't want that energy to be trapped in me. But the other thing I'll mention here as it ties to our core wisdom is that I also do this with joy, because I feel like for a lot of us, we have capacity, or we spend a lot of time with the pain. And what we're not doing enough of is spending time with the joy. And joy isn't just a mind thing. Oh, this is so nice. And I'm really enjoying this. And isn't this experience with my family pretty and nice? It's the actually feeling it in my body. And then the very last thing I'll say about core wisdom is that, first of all, it can be developed. The more we do it, we develop it. It's like a muscle, of course, is that we want to develop our core wisdom so that we build more settled nervous systems, so that we are more settled, so that we're less likely to be activated. And when we are triggered by the horrible shit that happens to us, we're able to address it. And so there, like many experiences, like there is no blue pill or red pill that we can take and like, oh, look at that, instantly I am healed. It's not like that. It's a journey. But the better we get, the better and better we get, the less rattled we are and the happier we are, or more joyful. Let's say more joyful.
Let me see if I can translate that to two examples. So let's just say an example that everybody can relate to. And it's that you have a friend group and you recognize as you're listening to this conversation that you are very activated within this friend group. You're always worried about what you're going to wear. You're typing your text to them 3 or 4 times and then deleting it, putting a lot of emojis, and you are out to dinner with this friend group and you realize, oh my gosh, they've made plans to go away for the weekend 2 weeks from now, and I'm not invited with them. And you
Yes.
have that moment where the buzzing really starts, your face turns bright red, you feel the lump in your throat, and you immediately do what we all do, which is either just take a big slug of your margarita or excuse yourself and go cry like a child in the stall of
Yes.
the bathroom,
Yep.
or you just shove it down and pretend you don't care.
Yep.
In that moment, is there anything subtle or not subtle that you would recommend that somebody do? Or is it easier to come back to it when you're alone so that you can be freer in how you process it? Like, what do you recommend to people who are just
Yes.
starting to become aware of this and tap into that?
Yes. So in We've Got This, my new book, I talk about planning in advance of situations happening. Because here's the thing, everyone. In the moment when we're activated and the shutdown starts, it's really hard in that moment to be like, okay, here's what I'm going to do. Because in that moment, we literally feel like we're going to cry or throw up, or we want to run from the building, or we want to die, like literally. And after the fact, yes, let's come back to it. But in advance of situations happening, we plan out what we will do when that difficult moment arises. So first of all, I call it scripting. There are 3 things I want to leave you with.
Yep.
Step 1, script. Scripting is the act of planning out in advance of a situation happening. What is it that I'm going to say in this moment when something difficult happens to me? Or let's say you're going to tell someone you're dating that you love them for the first time. And you're like, I know this is going to be hard for me. I know I'm probably going to shut down and I'll be nervous. Scripting is the act of planning out what you're going to say in advance, because what happens is we move it from conscious brain into unconscious brain. In the moment when we are activated, we're like, oh my God, I'm so nervous. It's like the words will be there. Why? Because you implanted them in your brain for future retrieval. So we always script out what we're going to say in these moments in advance, and like have myriad versions of them. I by the way, you're like, Ritu, where do you do your scripting? Like you can do it at your desk and write it down. I do it in the shower. I do it while I'm walking down the street.
So it can be both mental or written down.
Yes. I mean, it's better. It's always better, everyone, to write things down.
Why?
Like there's a cognitive process that happens in the brain. It ties back to neuroscience that enables us to engage in better information retention. But here's the thing. If someone were to say to me, I'm not going to write it down, fine. I'd rather than you just practice it in your head, at least. Something is better than nothing. Do something, everyone. So step number 1, script. Step number 2, choose in advance. What am I going to say to myself in that situation? Like self-coaching. When the moment happens and I feel the shutdown start, what am I going to say to myself? So you choose your affirmations or mantras in advance, always in advance. And so, for example, I already modeled a few. I like to say to myself, Ritu Bhasin, stand in your power. And the reason that really works for me is because for decades, I didn't stand in my power. And I'm now all about it. I'm like, I'm standing in my power. I don't give an F what's happening around me. Or Ritu Bhasin, you've got this. I love that. Or you can do this. I'm worthy. You choose your mantra affirmation, whatever it's going to work for you in advance. The third thing we do, and this is important because let's remember the body leads, not the mind. We say to ourselves, when I get activated, what am I going to do to settle myself in my body? So for me in particular, it's breath work. And in fact, if you said to me, what's the number 1 thing I can do for my body to calm myself in any situation? It's deep belly breathing. You can just go to Dr. Google and put in deep belly breathing. I talk about belly breathing in both my books. That deep, calm breath, focusing on the exhalation in particular, because it engages the parasympathetic or the flow part of our system, the exhalations. And the reason I love breath work to calm ourselves in situations is you're breathing anyways, number 1. You might as well do it in a better, more effective, healthy, productive way. And no one can see you doing it. So if you're worried that, like I would say, like I put my hand on my heart a lot, or I'll like rub my leg, or I'll just give myself a quick like embrace. Like I'll be like, you're good, you're safe. You're telling your body you're safe. If you're like, I can't do that in front of people, I hear that. Then just start your deep breathing. And so those 3 things, you have your scripts, you have your self-coaching affirmations ready to go. And you've told yourself, as soon as I feel activated, I'm going to start this body work in this situation, calm myself, the very last thing we do is we visualize. So in advance, we picture ourselves doing these 3 things. Why? We're implanting, let's go back to neuroscience, future patterns of behavior. And we go into situations with these tools. So that way we're ready to go.
When I think about the topic of both authenticity and how to be your truest, most powerful self, this is so difficult for people because authenticity is about you not censoring yourself. You identified the 3 different versions we have of ourselves.